It's good to be with you guys. I was excited to be here. I heard they were going to be playing a Rolling Stones song, and I like the Rolling Stones. That's really cool, but I didn't know which song it was, and I actually thought it was going to be Sympathy for the Devil, which I thought was super inappropriate in the church. I was like, are you really going to do Sympathy for the Devil? All right, whatever. I want to tell you a story. Carl and I, about 6 months ago, we went to a church planter retreat that was down in Raleigh. And so we were down there. They had church planters from all over the Southeast and the Mid-Atlantic came together, and they kind of gave us some great content. We hung out for a couple days. Well, one night of the retreat, they took us all out to dinner. It was all expenses paid thing, and they took us to a Mongolian barbecue place. You guys like Mongolian barbecue? Anybody like that? I love Mongolian barbecue, and I don't think we have a good Mongolian barbecue place in Richmond, at least not that I've found. We don't really, I don't know, we have a lot of good stuff there. We have tobacco in Richmond, that's a thing, but Mongolian barbecue, not so much. And so we went to this restaurant, and I was super excited about it. And if you've never been before, what you do is you pile a bunch of food up into a bowl, and for me that involves a little bit of vegetables and a lot of meat, just sort of piled up into a big, as much as you can cram into this bowl. You give it to them, and then they have this big flat sort of grill, and they've got these large like chopstick looking things, but they're about this long and real, kind of thick. There's two of them, and they pour your food out onto the grill, and then they'll start moving it around with the big sticks, and they'll cook it. And what was this amount of food actually cooks down to about this tiny amount, right? And then they give it to you, and you have it over rice or whatever, and it's really good. And so we're sitting there eating, and we finished it all. But there's two things: one, it was all paid for, and then two, it was all you can eat. So I was like, man, that was a lot of food. And Carl's like, do you want to go get some more? I'm like, I kind of do. And here's the thing, it wasn't even that good. Like, on the scale of Mongolian barbecue, this wasn't a great one, but I was like, well, it's free and it's all I can eat. Yes, I'll go get more of it. So we went back up and I ate more. And so I ate all of that. I ate my second course of it. And I sat down, I just kind of pushed away from the table. I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like, that is enough. That is way too much food. It's sort of like, God bless America, how much food I was just able to have. And I'm just sort of sitting there like, okay, all right, we're done here. This was good. And the waitress, she comes over and she says, really dangerous words. She says, would you like to see the dessert menu? And I'm like, no, I don't want to see the dessert menu. I'm full. I am so full right now. I don't want to eat another bite. No way. That would be just gross right now to eat that. But then I was like, could I just look at the dessert menu, maybe just to see what's on it, Like, let me just take a look and let me just glance at it. Because I was actually a little curious, like, what does Mongolian barbecue dessert look like? Like, do they crack an egg on that grill and then, like, throw cake powder mix in there or something, just kind of swirl it all up and hand it to you? It's kind of gross, but it might be fine, And so I ordered dessert, and like so many times before, I was like, I think I'll have the dessert too. And I had dessert, and then later on at the hotel, I sort of regretted that decision. And it's a weird thing, and I've been wondering about it. What is it? Because I have it in me and you have it in you. There's a little voice inside your head that even though you're full, even though you've had enough, there's a little voice inside your head that goes, I want more. I can have more. Wouldn't it be great if I could just have some more right now, even if you don't really want it, but you kind of want it, or you definitely don't need it, but you still want it? You want more. What is it in us that's like that? It's like that about food, for sure, but it's like that about a lot of things. Our appetites are not satisfied. It's like that about sex. You have sex and you go, or I would say no one really has sex and goes, well, that's quite enough of that. I don't need to do that ever again. No, usually you go, well, this is great. Let's do this again. Maybe later, like even like a couple hours from now, we could do this again. This is a great idea. Like that is an appetite that we have that is not easily satisfied. We just constantly want more. I got to have more of whatever that is. And it's like that about a lot of things. Some of us have an appetite for winning. We have a constant desire to win and to constantly win more. So whether it's with your coworkers, like on sales goals or something like that, like I gotta beat everybody in the office at this thing, and I'm gonna win that way. Or if it's your fantasy football team or like a Sudoku puzzle, it doesn't matter. You just want to win. And people who are so driven to win are called type A. They're called driven. They're called ultra competitive. Sometimes they're called jerks. As I've found out that we get called that sometimes. We get ultra competitive and we want to win. And I've taught this to my kids too. Like, my kids play upward basketball, and their last game of the season was yesterday. I have 3 boys, and 2 of them play in this league. And that league's supposed to be kind of instilling Christ-like character in kids as they learn to play the game of basketball. And it was a lot of fun. And I had to remind my kids even yesterday morning as they were playing. I was like, kids, just remember, as a family, what we believe. The only thing that matters is that you have fun. And the way you have fun is by winning. It was, right? Come on. Come on, right? Hey, we got to instill these values in our children. They're not going to just pick that up from the rest of the world. They have to know from us what matters as a family. So some of us are just driven, right? And we always, it's not enough to win one thing. You got to win the next one and the next one. And so we constantly want more. We're like that with stuff. This country is 3% of the world's population, yet we consume 25% of the world's resources. We're a country that likes a lot of stuff. Guys, we collect things. I don't know what's on your list, but guys collect things like football jerseys and iPods and guitars. If you have one, you might as well have 6. Like, there's just this desire to constantly want more. Women collect things too, usually different things. A lot of times, and this is, I know, an unfair stereotype, but there's some truth to it. A lot of times women collect shoes. And so they'll have 20 pairs, and they'll walk into Aldo, and it'll be like, there's another pair that I have to have, and now I have 21. It's like, and that won't satisfy you either. You're going to want 22 when it comes along. Why is that? What is this thing inside us that we constantly want more? It's like that with money. They found out on surveys that people desire to make 50% more than what they make consistently across the board. So when they ask people who make 35 grand a year, how much would you like? And people say, about 50 grand would be about perfect, 50, 52, somewhere in there. If I could make that amount of money, then I would be content. Then I would be satisfied. Then I'd be happy. Well, they ask people who make 50 a year, how much money do you want to make? And they say, if I could make 75 grand a year, I would be so set. It would feel good. I'd get everything paid for. I'd be in good shape. And they ask people to make 100 grand a year. How much money would you like to make? And they go, if I just made 150 a year, all my bills would be paid, everything would be set, and I'd be in good shape. Over and over, we all consistently want 50% more. And so there's something inside us that always wants more. And I want to talk about just basically how we deal with it, because the truth is, it's a lie. The lie that we tell ourselves is this: if I just get X, then I will be satisfied. If I can just have that girl, if I can just date that guy, if I can drive that car, if I can make that income, if I can live in that neighborhood, then I'll be satisfied. I will be content. I'll be happy. And I want to tell you that it's a lie. That emperor has no clothes. And I want to call it out today and talk about what is true. You see, our appetites, our desires are not sinful in and of themselves. It's not a sin to desire more, to be ambitious. In fact, you could argue that our desire for more is hardwired into us. If you go back to the creation story in the beginning of Genesis, in the beginning of the Bible, the first time God speaks to man after he's created man, look at what God says to man, because you'll see the desire for more kind of in there. In Genesis chapter 1, we'll look at verse 28. We have that on the slide. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Right there in the beginning of the story, God says, go make more. I've got you started in a garden. That's good. I want you to build it out. And here we are. Look, here we are living in the world where we've built it out, and we've made more. There's more of us here outside of those original people. We're building this thing out. And so the desire for more is not necessarily sinful. It's just what we do with it. Sometimes our ambitions are godly, and sometimes our ambitions become selfish. So I want to look at 2 twin boys in the Old Testament and how their desire for more was their undoing, and see how we can learn from it. There's a story of two guys, Jacob and Esau, and I want you to kind of hear from Genesis in the Old Testament, the book of Genesis, chapter 25. We'll put it up on the screen. I want you to hear their story and their kind of bloodline, their lineage there, and I want you to hear how their desire for more kind of derails them. Here, Genesis 25, we'll start with verse 19. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean from Paddan Aram, and the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, now this is our two heroes of the story today, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger. That's a key detail. The older will serve the younger. When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. All right, you have a dysfunctional family tree. You have Abraham at the top. Well, we all have them, right? So this is theirs. At the top of the tree is Abraham. Abraham is considered now the father of three major world religions. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam all trace the roots back to this guy, Abraham. Abraham gives birth to a son, Isaac. Isaac, with his wife Rebekah, they have these children, Jacob and Esau, and they're told at their birth that, hey, the younger is going to eventually, or the older is actually going to eventually serve the younger. Now, the way they named these kids, they were named by the circumstances surrounding their birth. So they didn't just go through the big Jewish book of baby names. They didn't do that back then. They were actually living those names that we now have in a book. So what they did in that day was they named people by circumstances that surround their birth. So when Esau comes out, he's hairy, so they name him Esau, which means hairy, or Edom, which means red. They give him this name. And then Jacob, when he comes out, he's grabbing Esau's heel on his way out, and so they name him heel grabber. The word Jacob. The word also means he cheats or cheater, which is, if you follow the whole story of Jacob, that's an important detail in his life as well. So that's how they named babies that back then. Can you imagine if we named babies now based on the circumstances that surround their birth? How many kids right now would be walking around named Epidural, right? Like, right? Or have a name like, you did this to me, or something like that. That's how we named our kids, is what happened there at their birth. Well, that's what they did. And you see a significant detail here about Jacob that's going to come into play. In verse 27, again, it says, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter. Listen how manly this is. A man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Man, you catch that? Do you think Jacob grew up with some dad issues? Didn't he? I mean, it's kind of there in the story. Isaac loves Esau. When you ask Isaac about his sons, hey, Isaac, tell me about your sons, he'll talk about Esau, because he's the one who's the wild game hunter, He's going to be like, that's my boy Esau. He killed a 12-pointer with a sling and a stone the other day. I'm so proud of him, And they'll be like, well, tell us about your other son. Oh, Jacob? Yeah, he cooks with his mom. Like, that's basically it. And you can imagine that Jacob grows up desiring the approval of his father and desiring the blessing from his father. And at some point, Jacob's appetite for more, his desire for more, will cross the line into ungodly. In fact, we'll see it here. Verse 29. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted. Therefore, his name was called Edom. Okay, so he comes in and says, let me eat that stew because I'm exhausted. And Jacob's in there cooking, and Esau's been out hunting. And this is pretty, it's kind of that like, oh, I'm going to die. You'll hear Esau say that in a second. Like, oh, I'm dying here that I can't have any food, which is such like over-dramatic, maybe like teenage boys, right? And if you have sons, I have 3 of them, this is the kind of thing you hear around our house. Give me that, or I'm going to die. How come you get to eat first? It's that same sort of boys will be boys thing, and it's pretty normal talk. And so listen to how Jacob answers him. Verse 31. Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. All right, let's talk about a birthright for a second. A birthright in that ancient world is when you give a double portion of your inheritance to your firstborn. So Esau is the firstborn, and you can bet he held that over his brother. Even though he was born before him by a few seconds, I'm sure he was always like, I'm oldest, I get to go first about whatever, And so Esau also has the birthright, which means when his parents die, Esau is going to get a double portion of the birthright, a double portion of the inheritance to be distributed, to take care of the family, so that most of the family wealth stays with the oldest son. Everybody will get a little bit, but Esau is going to get an extra portion of the blessing. And in that culture, he's considered the favored one, the chosen one, the one who is blessed by God even. So it's a very special thing to have the birthright, to be that firstborn and all that goes with it. And so Jacob knows he will eventually be the man. That prophecy about at his birth that said the older will serve the younger. Jacob knows as the younger child that eventually he's going to get what's coming to him. But he's not satisfied to just to sit back and let it come to him. He wants more. And Esau, he wants more as well. He's hungry, and what he wants more of is just some food. And so it's a weird situation here, but Esau is going to give up his birthright for a bowl of stew. Look at verse 32. Esau said, I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? High drama, right? I'm dying over here. Give me something to eat. Who cares if I have a birthright? Jacob said, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. How short-sighted is this on Esau's part? He's sitting there going, oh, I'm dying. He's probably not dying. He's probably going to be okay. And he sells his birthright for a bowl of stew. And then it says he despises his birthright, which is pretty typical, right? When we lose something, we like to justify that to ourselves, and we go, I didn't like that anyway, you know? I'm glad she broke up with me. I didn't like her anyway. I can do better, you know? She was just a show pony. I need a stallion, you know, or whatever. Like, I know stallions are male. Just go with my analogy. It's from a movie from 20 years ago, but nonetheless. So she makes that, or he makes that kind of dramatic thing like, oh, I didn't really care about that birthright anyway. And there's two appetites that are out of control. Esau's appetite for food and Jacob's appetite to have more and to be a big deal. And if you think about it, it's a ridiculous story. The more I read it, as I look at it, as I've ever heard this story in years past, it's a ridiculous story. Here's the question. Who gives up their birthright, all the future blessing, inheritance, promise of God, all the money that comes with that? Who gives all of that up just for a bowl of stew? Who does that? And the answer is this. You do it, and I do it. It just depends on what the bowl of stew is. You and I are pretty regularly willing to mortgage our future happiness, our future blessing, our future intimacy for a bowl of stew, for that one thing that's in front of us that promises to fulfill us, but ultimately never satisfies us and will never fulfill our appetites. Parents, you see this in kids, right? If you give your kids $1 and say, you can buy candy with this $1, or you can save it, put 10 of them together, you'll get $10 eventually if you save this, and then we'll buy something more awesome, a really cool toy or whatever. 9 times out of 10, that kid's going to take that $1 and go buy candy, because it's instant gratification. They will trade the promise of future blessing for the bowl of stew that's in front of them right there in that moment. And you've probably seen it in your own life. There was a spring break trip, and you thought, if I just drink this, if I just smoke this, she looks really good, and if I can just have her, she is the most attractive bowl of stew that I have ever seen in my life. But here's the reality. You're going to trade your future intimacy with your spouse for that one-time event with that beautiful bowl of stew, because at the end of the day, she's still just a bowl of stew, and you're going to trade your purity for someone who won't be worth it. Maybe that bowl of stew for you is not another person. Maybe the bowl of stew is a job. Maybe you have the opportunity right now that you're looking at a promotion, and the promotion is good, and there's a lot of extra financial reward that's going to come with that promotion. And they say, you know what, you're going to have to travel a lot, and you're sitting there as a family guy or girl, you're sitting there going, this is good. I can get this promotion. It's going to bring more money into our family. This is going to be great. I'm going to have to travel more. And the reality is that travel schedule means you're going to miss your son's baseball games. You're going to miss your daughter's dance recitals. And that's going to add up over the years. And if a future version of you could come back and talk to you right here in this moment, that future version of you might say, don't make that trade. Don't make the trade. Because you don't want to grow up and have your kids not know you. Don't make the trade. It's just not worth it. That promotion, maybe right now, and I can't say this for everyone in the room, but maybe that promotion that's staring you in the face is really just a bowl of stew. It's really just something that's temporary that ultimately won't satisfy you at all. If we could go back and talk to Esau in the story? You know, Esau, he gives up his birthright for a bowl of stew. If we could go back there and say to Esau, look, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have 12 sons. They're going to move to Egypt. They're going to be enslaved there, which is bad, but someone's going to come up to rise up to save them, and God is going to call Moses to save your descendants, and it's going to be a very good thing. And when God, the creator of the universe, reveals himself to Moses, when God speaks to Moses, Esau, this is what God is going to say. God's going to say, I am the God, the father of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. They're going to be talking about you for generations and generations. You're going to be famous, Esau. But look, if you do this right now, if you trade all of that for a bowl of stew, what's going to happen is they're going to stand, is Moses going to be called, and God's going to stand, or is going to appear to Moses, and he's going to say, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Esau, you're going to be written right out of the story. And it's just a bowl of stew. It's just not worth it. Don't make that trade. And here's the reality, guys. The job offer that you have, the attractive girl that's in front of you, the wonderful guy that you think, wow, he would be so amazing to be with, that opportunity to go into financial debt that you think will pay off down the road, there will be nobody standing next to you saying, don't make that trade when you're in the moment. There's no future spouse that can stand next to you in this moment and say, it's not worth it for what we're going to have later to make that trade right here and now. No one will be standing next to you. There's no future version of you that's going to come back and stand next to you to say, don't make that trade. So we have to have something internally so that we don't give up our future for something that won't satisfy us, that's just a bowl of stew. You see, that bowl of stew will never satisfy your appetite. We think it will, but it won't. We have something that researchers call impact bias in our brains. It works like this. Impact bias is this. When I see something and I go, I want to have that, and you know what I'm talking about because you've ordered dessert before. You go, I want to have this, and it's going to be this good. And then I order it, and it's actually this good. And eventually, over time, how I feel about it later, it's this good. And you've seen that happen over and over. The crazy thing about it is that impact bias, that phenomenon, it was that way the last time you ordered it as well. It was the last time you made that move, that you traded for that bowl of stew. You thought it was going to be this good, and it was only this good, and eventually it felt like it was this good. And so we continue to do that pattern. So how do we stop? Let me just give you a couple ideas, and then we're done. How do we take ambition and fuel it in a godly way and not cross that line into that continual desire for more? I gave you a tool. It was on your chair when you came in. This piece of paper, you can pull it out. It's kind of dark out there, but I think you can see it. It says 10 years from now. I'm amazed at how many people do not think long-term about their life. How many of you are planning on being alive 10 years from now? Just a quick show of hands, okay? Pretty much all of you? Okay, good. Why don't you think about what life would be 10 years from now? Why don't you think about where am I going? Who do I want to be? And so I just gave you 4 categories. Spiritual goals. What do you want your relationship with God to be like 10 years from now? Do you want to pray? Do you want to be better at praying? Do you want to read? Do you want to know Him? Do you want to be in great vertical relationship with God and horizontal relationship with others? Financial goals. You want to make a certain amount of money. You want to have money saved up. You want to be giving money away. Like, where do you want to be with that? Relational goals with one another. What are your hopes there? Do you want to have children? If you're not married, do you want to be married 10 years from now? And if so, do you want to have children? Maybe even as a goal, you could write the names of your children here. And then I know your future spouse is going to have a say in that, but you can always be like, look, I wrote it down first years ago, and I already put it on paper of what our children are going to be named. Or career goals. Where do you want to go? Write this down. Take some time. This is a message with homework, okay? Take time today while it's fresh in your mind. If you're married or engaged or whatever, maybe sit with that significant other and sit down and go, all right, what are our goals here? Where are we going? And really write this stuff out. There was a kid in the service last night who was I guess, doodling during my message, and he had written out on a little piece of paper that they gave to me later. He said, 10 years from now, I want to go out of the house. It's a bold goal right there, you know? I mean, I'm glad he was listening and thinking about where he wants to be 10 years from now. What I want to tell him is don't start playing World of Warcraft or you'll never leave. So where do you want to be 10 years from now? I'm amazed at how many people don't think of it and don't consider where they're going. And then the second piece of this is this. Ask yourself the question that's at the bottom here. In light of these goals, is this current thing really just a bowl of stew? Where are you going? And then evaluate the thing that's in front of you based on where you're actually going and where you're trying to go. If you will ask that question regularly of decisions that you're facing, it will save you a lot of pain and a lot of future heartache. Look, maybe you are reeling from bad decisions that you've made. Maybe last night, Saturday night, was a bowl of stew for you. St. Patrick's weekend, maybe there's lots of bowls of stew in line for you. Maybe last night was a bowl of stew for you. Maybe last week there was a bowl of stew where you pursued something that you thought would satisfy you, and it just didn't. And that's true of just like when you pursued that thing before. Or maybe a month ago, or a year ago, or 5 years ago. We all, this is true for me, it's true for you. We all have bowls of stew in our past. Things we compromised in the moment, and we said, I want this, it's going to satisfy me. And the truth is, it doesn't. Here's what I want you to know this morning. God has grace for you. God covers over those things. God can redeem your past and make something better of your future. All of who you have been does not have to define all of who you are becoming. God can wipe that stuff away, and he does. And I know we'd love to go back and say, man, I wish I hadn't done that. But, regretting all of those things can be a lot of wasted energy. What are you going to do from today, the 16th of March, forward? Are you going to pursue after God? Are you going to prayerfully consider where your life is going? Because if you do that, then you're really getting somewhere. Then you're going to move forward with godly ambition and not selfish ambition. I tell people from time to time, the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. Why not start this today? Start the change today. Some ambition is good and godly, and some just isn't. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, he talks about how people, their hearts get darkened and they have a continual lust for more. And some of you know exactly what that's talking about. You've been in situations, you've been addicted to things, you've pursued things, and you just have a continual lust for more. That's what our culture tells us to do. It tells us to desire more always. And if we're honest, that's what our own hearts tell us to do sometimes as well. So let's get off that train. Let's actually set a plan for where we're going in the next 10 years. And then let's ask the question, in light of these goals, is this current thing really just a bowl of stew? Let's pray. God, I know our stories too often involve a lot of compromise. They involve pursuing something that's temporary, that doesn't satisfy us, that we think will satisfy us. And it's frustrating, and we get disappointed in ourselves when we fall down again. But God, we know through your Son, Jesus, that you redeem things. You redeem our brokenness. You are the God of second chances, and you rewrite our stories. And so, God, I pray that from this point forward, we will pursue you. We will let the past be in the past, and we will move forward in a new future of giving our lives to you and chasing after you. God, I thank you for this family here at Mosaic and the work that's being done here in Maryland. I thank you for how you are doing your work in the hearts of people. Do it again, God. Do your thing and empower these people. God, I pray everyone goes home today really not just I'm going to go to lunch and forget about what I heard today, but they take a moment to sit down and say, who do I want to be 10 years from now? Where is this thing going? God, you've given us a hope and a future. I pray we cling to that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.